You have to obviously have a clear understanding of what the job requirements are. And then you have to look at transferable skills that align with those. I think that's very, very important to make sure that, you're not looking too far away from the skill set that you really need to get the job done. The other thing I think that I look at is what kind of extracurricular activities. For example, I love to place Eagle Scouts because Eagle Scouts work on projects. They work in a team. They have a lot of things they have to do to get that Eagle Scout designation. And if they're doing that on their own, then they're going to transfer that attitude, aptitude into a job position. So look at some of the other extracurricular activities these people are doing.
There are opportunities for our work and careers everywhere, if you know where to look. That's easier said than done, especially in our fast-paced and constantly changing world. Mary Ann Faremouth is talking to experts, employers, and job seekers to bring you insight and understanding about what's possible. This is Career Can Do, where we're navigating the new work world.
Welcome to the Career Can Do podcast, a top global podcast dedicated to helping you navigate the new work world and beyond. My name is Mary Ann Faremouth, and I'll be your guest for this episode. And today I am just delighted to have Russel Treat, the CEO and president of Intersys Corporation, on the show. Russel Treat is an industry leader committed to delivering the highest value to pipeline operators by addressing their greatest needs and concerns, especially operational efficiency, safety, and government regulation. I wanted to have him on the show today because I believe he's got a lot of good information to impart to our listeners. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Russel Treat. Thank you so much.
On this episode, our guest is Mary Ann Faremouth with Faremouth & Company, and we're going to talk to Mary Ann about finding and retaining the next generation of pipeliners. Before we dive in, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do, and how you happen to be interested in pipeline and pipeline technology.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. My name is Mary Ann Faremouth. I've been a recruiter that focuses in on the energy sector for almost 40 years. I've written 3 books about the job market, about how to be your best self and find that best job. I'm a podcaster also. I have a show, Career Can Do, and I'm a nationally syndicated columnist. And Russell, I write and speak about ways that employees can have more success in their searches, in their job, in their companies. And I'm just thrilled to be here to share what I know with your listeners.
Awesome. Well, I know for a lot of people in the pipeline world, there's a lot of interest in where are we going to find the new talent? Where do we find the next generation of pipeliners? I think the first question I want to ask is, how is staffing a pipelining position different maybe than other industries? What's unique or different about pipelining versus some of the other industry verticals you may have worked in?
Well, I think it's different because I think we've done things for many, many years in one way, and we're used to doing them that way, and they don't work anymore as well. And I think that in the pipeline industry, and I think in some others, but I think mainly too in the pipeline industry, we have an unprecedented talent shortage. I think historically the reason for that really is back in World War II, after the war, we had a surge in population. We've never had a surge in population, Russell, like that since that time. And all those babies that were born back then, who are now referred to as the baby boomers, well, they're all retiring. For every 4 that retires, we have 1 available candidate. So that means you have a gap. You have a shortage. When you have a shortage of any commodity, whether it's potatoes, generators, or people, what happens? Prices go up. So we have a shortage of candidates, I think specifically in the energy industry. We're all strapped, we're all challenged to find ways to circumvent the problem and find good people to work in these companies. So I think historically that's part of the reason, but I think it's different in the pipeline industry because the pipeline industry traditionally has looked for people with certain qualifications, with certain backgrounds. And if they're not out there, it's like, well, we don't want to change. We're resistant to change. And I think it's getting everybody to understand we have to change or we're going to leave these jobs open for a long time.
Yeah, no, I think that's extremely well said, Mary Ann. I certainly am finding that. We have a position that we've been working to fill for, I think, 6 months now, and we've gotten close a couple of times, but we haven't actually got it over the finish line. And I'm certainly finding it to be tougher. that whole conversation about, we have a way that we do things. We also have ways that we hire. We have places that we historically go and look for talent to hire. And the fishing ain't nearly as abundant as it used to be in those ponds. I guess that's the way that,
I think you hit on something
Texas
really
boy would say it.
Important. We got to fish in different ponds. All right. Because we're not catching the fish in the old ponds. We got to look at other ponds.
So what are some of the places that people ought to be looking? What kind of ponds ought they be looking at?
I think we need to look at transferable skills. My claim to fame is longevity. And by that, I mean, I'm really proud to say the people that I place stay a long time. I mean, I belong to many organizations, many energy organizations, and I go to these conferences. I speak at a lot of them, and I see people I placed 10, 12, 18 years ago. I think the reason for that, I'm proud to say, is that I look at who the person is, what's important to them, where their passions are, and I try to align them with positions that fit those. And when we do a placement like that, Russell, in my opinion, we have a bigger chance, a higher probability of having those people stay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought about that, but as I'm listening to you talk, one of the things that's coming up for me is this idea of staffing versus placement. Because staffing is kind of, I got a need, I find a body, I put the body against the need, versus placement is, I have these needs and I have these people, and where does it match up well? That's a different way of thinking about it, frankly.
It is. And, when we've been doing things one way for so long, I mean, it's just human nature. We're resistant to change. But the reality is, from my side of the desk, we don't have a choice. We have to change, or these positions are not going to get filled. If they don't get filled, the productivity is affected.
Not only the productivity, but also the safety performance. And that's a big deal in our business. And it's also one of the reasons we're resistant to change is change does have a safety impact, right?
It does.
Certainly in the short term, often a negative safety impact in the short term, even if there's a better safety performance down the road. It's a big deal in our business. So I've done some conversations about, the value of looking at people that are transitioning out of the military. Where are some of the other places that you might look that pipeliners might not historically think about looking to find the right kind of mindset, skills, and passions for our business?
I think you need to look at some of these college internship programs. And I think people need to be open to internships because, first of all, it's safer because it gives you a chance to evaluate the person before you actually hire them on a permanent basis. So I think we need to work more with the colleges, and it benefits the colleges, it benefits the employers, it benefits the candidates. All right. So I think we need to look at people that might not have, years and years of experience, but are studying for a particular role, whether it be engineering or supply chain or inventory or PR, communications. So I think we need to look at people that don't have the 5 years experience we're always looking for. Now, of course, if we have a senior level position, that's not going to work. But I think for some positions that can work.
What that opens up for me when you talk about this is that certainly colleges and internships out of colleges, and I'm thinking about 4-year schools, lots of needs because we're an engineering centric business, but there's also a lot of needs for technicians. And those people will be coming out of the NCO ranks, out of the military. They'll be coming out of 2-year technical colleges, VOTEC colleges. They'll come out of things like DeVry Institute and other kind of technical training schools, and working out with those schools to get internships for the technician roles. And those could be very, very productive. I even think that working with your local high schools in the areas where you operate, there's a lot of areas that we operate as pipeliners where they're rural, they're remote. People would like to stay in the area, but, difficult to find a good paying job. So there's opportunities in those domains. Those are some places we haven't historically looked, right?
Right. And I think networking too. I mean, I just had a situation the other day where I called one of my clients and he had experience in coding. And I said, I'm looking for somebody for one of my clients that has coding experience. Do you know of anyone that's looking right now that you can refer to me that's really got a good background? He said, I certainly do. And Russell, when you look at people that have been referred to you from other people that you admire, respect, trust, you're going to get a better caliber in a lot of cases of a candidate because he's coming with the referral base. He's coming with a kind of a review, so to speak. So
well, he's coming with a reputation.
Yeah, a reputation that's proven that somebody knows of him. And I think, sometimes that's a different pond we can fish in, is it referrals. All right, networking.
Well, and there's a lot of specialties in pipelining that are not just pipelining specialties. Coding is a good example. Integrity management is a good example. Cathodic protection is a good example. You find that in other industries. I think one of the other places to look is at the engineering firms, the engineering and construction firms, because there are people there that have many of the kinds of skills and base capabilities that would be effective.
And there's also
in pipelining.
Yeah, these engineering organizations. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can find them on Facebook.
Like ASME and such.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you can post a job there. All right. And you're right in the area of people that have the technical skills that you need. We just have to look at some different ways of doing things and be open to change. I think that's one thing that, and people have said to me, Mary Ann, we've been doing it this way for so long. We don't really want to change. I know you don't want to, but we have to. We don't have a choice. Yeah. All right. And I think one of the things we talked about, you and I, when we were in the Blue Room, that's so important is the military. All right. I love placing people out of the military because they come with a sense of discipline, a sense of methodology. All right. And we can train these people in our particular areas, but you got a diamond in the rough here when you look in the military, I think.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're absolutely right. The military, just by its nature, they understand following process and procedure. They understand modifying process and procedure on the fly. They understand safety. They understand chain of command. They understand working independently. They understand focus on getting the job done. All these things that are more what people would call soft skills. I don't know how soft those kind of skills really are. To me, those are the skills that are like really important, right?
Another area.
And that kind of goes to my next question is like when you go to these other sources, these other ponds, if you will, what are you looking for?
You have to obviously have a clear understanding of what the job requirements are. And then you have to look at transferable skills that align with those. I think that's very, very important to make sure that, you're not looking too far away from the skill set that you really need to get the job done. The other thing I think that I look at is what kind of extracurricular activities. For example, I love to place Eagle Scouts because Eagle Scouts work on projects. They work in a team. They have a lot of things they have to do to get that Eagle Scout designation. And if they're doing that on their own, then they're going to transfer that attitude, aptitude into a job position. So look at some of the other extracurricular activities these people are doing. Like I said, Eagle Scouts, that's a real important thing for me. Now,
any young person who at the age of 14 or 15 can get 11 or 12-year-olds to accomplish anything, that is an important set of leadership skills right there. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience as a former Eagle Scout and a part-time, assistant scoutmaster. Again, I think that's right. And really what you're pointing out, I think, is that there's certain things that are around leadership, communication, training, all these kinds of things that you learn in the military, you learn in scouting, and you learn in other kinds of jobs, that those skills are kind of universally transferable.
The other area that I am really pushing these days or suggesting these days is to come off this must have a degree. All right. Because I just had a situation the other day, a sales position. I had somebody without a degree that had so many clients they're going to bring to my company and walk in the door to put business on their bottom line, but he didn't have a degree. Russell, they wouldn't see him. And I said, wait a minute, you're going to see somebody with a degree. It's going to take him 2 years to get what this guy's going to bring to you in the door. It's not negotiable, Mary Ann. We have to have a degree. And I'm thinking, I can see a degree, an engineering degree or mechanical engineering degree for engineering jobs, but we're talking about a sales position. All right. Now, I understand the technical abilities and are refined and this and that. But at the end of the day, a sales position is about relationships. All right. And if you've got a person that's got so many good contacts. So I guess what I'm saying is, some of these requirements that we've used for so many years, are they really that important? Are they really that necessary? If a person without them is going to help your company grow and make that bottom line expand faster.
Yeah, I think you're making a really interesting point. I have an engineering degree and I have a master's in business. And I think about that often. I mean, both of those degrees have been important to my career. but there's nothing about what I do that really is directly, very little about what I do that's related to either of those degrees. Most of what I do, I have had to learn on the job. Mm-hmm. You don't learn SCADA out of school. You learn SCADA once you have some kind of basic electrical or other kind of training. And then you go to work and you start, experiencing the training that you get. And the most valuable training you get is the training you pursue as you're trying to be a professional in your position. I know of more than one people that have risen to fairly significant levels in pipeline companies that do not have degrees, but they had pretty hardcore technical training out of the military or someplace else that they applied and then advanced. The issue is not, do you have a degree? The issue is, can you continue to learn?
That's right. That's exactly right. And Russell, look at Michael Dell, Bill Gates, the Facebook guy. None of those guys have degrees. Look what they've done. Now, we're not talking specifically in the energy industry at this 5 seconds right now.
Well, yeah, but those guys all started college. Mm-hmm. They all got through a year or two and started doing something, and then the knowledge they needed was not available to them through the university system. They had to go elsewhere to continue to learn what they were interested in. So being a company that's primarily oriented around software and technology and so forth, we look for people that can learn. I like people that can learn on their own, get really good and stuck, and then know how to ask the right kind of questions. And they can run through that cycle quickly and effectively. Mm-hmm.
The other thing, too, that I think is important to mention here, we're kind of on this subject, is, the GPA. The 3.8, the 3.6, that's great. But if I have somebody with a 3.0 or a 2.7 or 2.8, but they worked full time and they paid for their education, I'm not going to stop presenting them or not present them because my client wants a 3.0 or above. They've got a 2.7, 2.8, but they work full time, they pay for their education, they've demonstrated so much ambition and hard work ethics. I'm going to support a person like that and place them. Do you agree with the GPA requirement that we have to look outside of that as well?
I think I'd frame it a little differently. I think you have to look at a person's ability to perform. And I think, I think you're looking for work ethic, stick-to-itiveness, the ability to overcome obstacles. Sometimes a high GPA demonstrates the ability to consume and process information and not the ability to struggle and win. And it depends on the role you're putting them in, right? If I'm putting somebody in an operations role, that's a very different consideration than I'm going to have them go run the lab.
Yeah, that's true. That's a
right. So, it goes to the comment earlier about placement. So anyways, I want to transition a little bit. So what we said is you got to look someplace new. We've given some examples. We've talked about character and soft skills and some of the things you're looking for and a way to maybe try to get outside of the box of degree and GPA and those kind of things, particularly for entry-level positions, like what are the things that really matter for the position? And then I think the other thing I want to talk about is the other thing about this. If we're in a resource-scarce environment, we can't afford to make hires that don't work. How do we make sure that our placement is successful? What are the elements of doing that?
I believe a lot of that goes into onboarding, the training initially that you give that person. The training, obviously, before you hire that person, you want to make sure you check those references. And you ask your person's previous employer the strengths and weaknesses of this person. Sometimes they won't tell you, but sometimes they will. So you do your homework. You do the investigation before, but also I think the right onboarding, the right training, that's critical. Just to throw somebody in a job and say, do it. The chances sometimes are not as high for success as someone that's been onboarded correctly, trained correctly, ridden with the manager to see what's important to the manager. They can have all the qualifications and look great on their resume. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with a human being. And you've got to take the time to work with that person to try to ensure the success of that person in your company. And I think the way you train and onboard is critical.
You talked a little bit about something that, I'm struggling to frame this question. So I'm going to make a statement and I'll try and turn it into a question. In my experience, onboarding starts in the hiring process.
Yes.
Part of what you're doing is you're trying to discover in the hiring process, what are the strengths, weaknesses, and limitations of the person you're hiring. And then your onboarding needs to address their strengths, weaknesses, and limitations. That means that every onboarding is unique. Particularly for entry-level positions, there can be a certain amount of onboarding that is required for everybody that is basic education and training. But onboarding is an individual process, and it's incumbent upon the hiring manager to understand, what do I need to do to bring this person on and have them stay, have them be productive, have them be successful, and have them be accretive to the organization, adding to the value.
I had an employer the other day interview somebody and asked the question. I had two people interview, and the person with the heaviest experience, he asked, what have you done in your career you're most proud that you've accomplished? And the person said, well, I've gotten raised. I've been promoted 3 times in 2 years. I had a 3.8 GPA. I graduated from Ivy League school. The other person that had maybe a year experience, they asked that question. He said, during COVID, there was a little boy down the street. He was trying to get on the baseball team. He tried, he never could get on, but here I was remote. And at 4:00, I'd go down there and help him. And you know what? He got on the team. And I was so proud. And he was just so excited. And my employer said, Mary Ann, I'm going to hire that kid because that kid went to help somebody else. He's going to come in here to my office, to my company, and be a team player. Now, depends on the position. If this is a technical position or a lab position, that answer maybe wouldn't have been as important. All right. Mm-hmm. This was more of a sales position. All right.
You can train in a whole lot of technical skills fairly quickly if somebody's interested and has some passion and cares. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. What I find with the onboarding is, I'll just tell you what we do, and I'll ask for your opinion on that because I think that might be an interesting discussion for the listeners. So anybody that we hire, they come in with a set of 90 and 180-day objectives. So we're defining that at the end of 90 days, you should have accomplished these things. At the end of 180 days, you should accomplish these things. And what I tell people, because we're a small company, we're growing, so often we're bringing people in who have skills and capabilities that we're not familiar with. They're additive to the company. So we tell these people that these 90-day and 80-day objectives, it's not so much about whether you get them done or not, but how we work together to improve the performance of the company by focusing on these objectives. And that blows some people's heads up. But what it means is, and one of the most successful hires I ever did, we had we had a 90-day objective and 180, and we got the 90 done, and we abandoned the 180 and rewrote the plan because we were having so much success. We changed plan and went a different direction. So in a small company, that's really critical. You've got to be flexible. I'm just curious, what do you think about that as a process for onboarding?
I think that's an amazing process. I think that's a process that more people should utilize because I think 90 days, you know a lot about what you got, okay, who you just hired. They're showing you everything they got. The first 90 days, if they come in like a house of fire and they're working hard, chances are you got a pretty good person who's going to continue on that way. But if in the first 90 days, you don't see a whole lot of drive, a whole lot of good attitude and resourcefulness and work ethic, then more than likely that's the best they're doing the first 90 days. The remainder isn't going to be that great. So I think that's crucial. Giving them objectives and in these 90 days, this is what I expect you to accomplish. I think if more companies did that, they'd have much better longevity in their hires because you'd see within those 90 days what you got.
Yeah, well, we're not perfect. Hiring is more like baseball than other things. If you're batting 300, you're doing pretty good. I think we do a lot better than 300, but I do think it helps. I want to kind of transition and talk to you about something I know that you're passionate, and that's this whole idea of becoming your best self. Because again, it's not just about placement. It's not just about onboarding. It's about retention. Can you talk to us a little bit about your philosophy around what management should be doing with employees to help them become their best selves and why that's so important?
Well, I think initially you need to find out what's important to that person. And in the interview, what really jazzes you? What are you most proud of? What is your ultimate goal coming in here? And I think that starting off, asking them what's important to them, and then making sure you're aligning them with a position that will allow them to actualize those actual feelings and needs. I think the longevity aspect, it's going to happen more regularly. There's a meeting there, an alignment of what's important to that person and what your job is going to offer them. If you've got a person come in and say, I've got to leave every day at 4:00. I've got, things to handle. I've got to leave here. But you've got some real important variables you're trying to accomplish in your company. That's probably not going to work. All right. So I think becoming your best self is, in my opinion, being in alignment with a job that helps you facilitate those. And the candidates that I place, they're in alignment with a company that allows them to actualize those needs they have. the probability of them staying in the company and being successful is a lot higher. So becoming your best self, to me, I've just written a book about it. All right. And I think it's crucial. I think anyone that comes to you that wants to be the best they can be, you got a star employee here because they're not going to just be mediocre. They want to be good. They want to be better. That gets me excited when I ask that question in an interview. If they say, look, I'm just looking for a paycheck. I just want to go in every day, do what I got to do and come home. I'm a little hesitant. I mean, I'll place them too in a certain kind of job. But I think asking the right questions in that interview to understand what's important to them, not only what's important to you in hiring, but what's important to them, and then being in alignment. I think that's very important to helping the applicant become their best self and the company to hire the best candidate they can to ensure longevity.
One thing you didn't talk about that I think is an element of this is they also need to fit the culture.
Oh, yes.
In my experience, I've had a lot of different teams over the years, but I think of two in particular. I think the team I have right now, which I love, they are high performing and I enjoy hanging out with them. I look forward to when we're going to have a meeting and go, afterwards and sit down and have a cocktail and just visit. I actually like hanging with these guys. And I had another team that was also high performance, but I didn't enjoy. And let me tell you, that doesn't work. That's not sustainable, right? So that whole idea about fitting the culture and being able to enjoy the people that you're hanging with is really important. I worked with one team and nearly everybody on that team was a motorhead. They all loved cars. They were either racing or they were rebuilding cars in their garage. And when they weren't working, that's what they would talk about. It's what they had going on with their cars. So I think that whole just not only do they need to have passion for the job and care, they also need to fit the culture. And when somebody doesn't fit the culture, if they're high performing, but they don't fit the culture, can be difficult, but it's important to have that conversation with that person and say, look, you're a key contributor. You're very valuable, but this really isn't the place for you to really flourish. There might be some places a better fit. Not that I want to lose you, but I mean, that's a very difficult conversation to have, but it can be really important.
Well, I think it's a crucial conversation. And I think sometimes fitting the culture can be even more important than compensation. If somebody really fits with that culture and they're really happy there, sometimes it's more important than how much money they're going to make. Now, I'm not saying they're going to take, a whole lot less than you're going to offer. No, but I think culture fit is crucial. I'm so glad you brought it up because it does ensure more longevity than if we don't have the right culture fit. And that's, again, asking questions in the interview that give you information about if they will fit the culture that you have.
Okay, so we're kind of coming to the end of our time. And what I often like to do is kind of try to capture my takeaways. So I'm going to try to do a quick, 1 minute, here's the summary. Here's what you need to take away from this episode. So I want to do this and I'm going to ask you to give me a letter grade. Okay. All right. So the first thing is start looking at some new places. Look at university internship programs. Look at technical colleges, maybe even high schools. People that are coming out of other industries but have the skills you need through trade associations, professional organizations. Basically, just throw a bigger net. In doing that, what you're looking for is the right character, the right so-called soft skills, and the cultural fit. And then if you find that person, plan their onboarding so that they get the technical skills they need, the company-specific skills they need. And once you have them onboarded, continue to help them find their passion and be their best self.
I think you said it beautifully, Russell. You nailed it.
Well, we didn't need to talk for 30 minutes. I could have just said that. We wouldn't need to spend all this time, right?
We gave some good examples, though.
Yeah, no. Anyways, it's a great conversation. I think for a lot of us, that are staffing, particularly hiring managers, there's a lot of roles where we don't hire very often. We may go 2 or 3 or 4 years and not hire a soul. So kind of having this out there and having this as a refresher can really be helpful.
I'm going to leave it with this. The only constant in life is change. So be open to change. Be willing to look in different places for good people that are going to make a contribution to your company. All right. I think if we're open to doing that in the energy sector, I think we'll have a lot more results, a lot happier employees, and we don't have to hire as often because people are going to stay.
Yeah, that's right. I couldn't agree more.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today with Russel Treat. You can download us on all major podcast platforms, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
We thank you for tuning in to our Career Can Do podcast. We make no guarantees on results for your particular quest, but we hope you enjoy the information presented. The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely that of the guest or speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Mary Ann Faremouth and Faremouth and Company. Thank you.